Hi, I'm talking with Jared and Neil with Senio Sign. After we published one of your pieces of content, we got this email from somebody that said this: paperless only works if you can also provide the paper. As any contract lawyer will tell you, clients still retain the right to see the document that all spaces are filled in and to sign that document that sits before them in caps, not just some blank screen with a line at the bottom. One educated patient can snarl up an entire morning unless you can whip out the paper version of a document so that they can see it and sign it.
I've got several responses. I'll take it, Jared, out the gate here. So that's actually not what we do, which is a big blank screen where you put in your signature once and sign all documents with a single click. So we've built a tool around inline signatures. We can get into eSign, the eSign Act, and an electronic signature law. I'm happy to chat a little bit about that, where you kind of sign once, click, and it auto signs and auto fills every agreement, which you get in some hot water that way, especially around like arbitration agreements. We've chatted with insurance professionals in the industry and said, in a court of law, if you can't show that they intended to sign that specific page, that specific agreement, and really understood the arbitration agreement, then your case is out the door. So different things like that. So, but they are signing in line. So when they go to click and add their signature or sign through power of attorney, any of that type of information, it's in the actual spot inside the agreement on the page that it's requested. It's pretty easy to just say, click here, sign once, and sign all the documents, but it's not really going to hold up on your end in court.
Well, I think the other thing too is the audit trail. So part of Senio Sign is there's a complete audit trail. So it does show, the timestamp, the computer, who actually was in the document, and the resident or the adult child or the power of attorney does have access to all of the documents. That's part of the process. They have their own portal that they go into to sign, and so they have access to every one of the documents that they're reviewing.
So after the documents are signed, can you print them?
Yeah, print or download. So you can save a digital version, a PDF version, which is what the community kind of has on hand. After that's executed, the resident, adult child, power of attorney, as Jared said, they all have access to that. So that's a big part of the eSign Act is intention to sign. And can you prove there was an intention to sign? So if you get on a larger e-signature platform, there's a consent to sign electronically often that you need to input some information, or they get around it with a check mark, like iTunes or some of the others. Yeah. We have that, but we actually ask for the last four of a social security number just to prove a little bit that there was an intent to sign. And then secondarily, we do have this audit trail, which proves intent to sign. They logged in, created an account, went in on their computer from home, or maybe a computer for a manager in person, et cetera, and went through that entire document. But they do have access at the end. And we have some that say, hey, I want printed copies, and the community will hit print and print everything. Or they can just say, hey, we'll send it to you electronically so you have a copy and can print it home.
Yeah.
Perfect. So one more question relative to this. What if somebody comes in and says, I'm just not signing electronically? You have to put paper in front of me. Does that just blow up what you're doing?
Not at all.
Yeah, not at all. Interestingly enough, we actually had a conversation about this morning, not in prelude to this, but we are working through a sign on paper process. So there are still on occasion people that say, hey, I need to sign on paper, or I want that physical copy to see. And so our software is now going to account for that and allow an easy way of getting that back associated with the correct resident, asking questions about compliance, making sure they didn't miss signatures or fields as they're uploading that, and then kind of tracking that as well. So a little bit of an audit trail, not around the e-signature, but definitely around the completion or adding of that document.
Yeah. It just occurs to me that my stepfather, who lives with us, he probably would rather, if he had to sign documents, he probably would rather do it on paper than on a computer. I don't know. I've never asked him. I know that when my mom went in and he had to sign a stack of papers, that I had to sit there and watch it for like 200 hours of time. And so I'm a big fan of this, but I know that it was probably more okay for him than for me. So, so, and I guess the other thing that I would sort of add conceptually is that there are lots of companies out there big companies that have spent millions on legal that have all kinds of electronically signed contracts, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
the eSign Act really allows for electronic signature across all of these documents. There's a handful of places included, and for the record, the eSign Act, most people don't know this, was actually passed in the year 2000. So we're 22 years in on this electronic signature thing. We actually have kind of joked around in the office a little bit about, like we're further from the eSign Act than like, a handful of different events. Like the launching of the Mac is to the passing of the eSign Act. So the Macintosh came out, I think, 14 years before the eSign Act was launched, et cetera. Anyway, and so like this is kind of old legislation at this point, but power of attorney documents generally provide, you need to provide a wet signature, birth certificates, death certificates, and then obviously around prescriptions, some of the controlled substances, things like that, are going to still require a wet signature. Other than that, we're seeing electronic prescriptions. We're seeing electronic signatures on everything. And oftentimes people think, well, it's got to look like a handwriting, or I need to be able to use my mouse to sign or my finger. Really, just typing your name with 2 forward slashes, one at the front and one at the back, counts as an electronic signature on paper. So,
really, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. One of the things I think is ironic, particularly when people have a resistance to this idea of moving into an electronic signature platform, is the electronic signature platform is typically, with most things with technology, it enables the user to actually ensure that there's more compliance with all of the documentation. Whereas if you're dealing with packets of information and wet signatures and, somebody that may have the tremors or filling out information, some of that information could be missed. It could be filled out incorrectly. Social security numbers may be missing, some of the digits. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Whereas when it moves into a digital platform, it creates some automatic controls in place, but it also is built into the software and into the tools themselves to ensure that, the only way for those documents to be completed is that every required cell or blank space is filled out correctly.
Yeah. It would be really fascinating to be able to go into a senior living community that's still all paper and do an audit. I'll bet you'd find, if you were talking 100 residents, I'll bet you'd find dozens and dozens of signatures and check boxes and things that were missed, or that were things that were really important. They were illegible, right? So,
We've talked with one provider, and one of their bigger issues was stuff written in the margins. They didn't have a full grasp of everything that they had agreed to as a company, where a resident had come in and said, like, cross something out, written something in the margins. Marketing manager came along, signed the last page, and just moved on. And they said, like, we're finding we've agreed to all kinds of things that we didn't even know. But I think compliance, better that you go in, Steve, and look through the 100 resident files than the state or corporate office, right? So, that's really where we're trying to help out on the day-to-day. Just if we can track compliance, require specific items, and then go and validate, what Jared's talking about. If we've got 8 digits for a social security number, we've got a little bit of a problem versus 9. We can't validate that social security number, but we can validate that there's 9 digits. It's formatted correctly. Things like that.
When I hear people come in and have questions like that, we get emails like that, it means there are probably other people who were wondering about it. And so, I'm actually really glad we got that request for information and clarification, but there's no question in my mind that what you're doing makes life so much easier, and really protects the community. So we're big fans. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks. Likewise.